The Oracle of Luna is a podcast with me, Bridget Engels, as your host. Here we have conversations with real live, present-day goddesses who are actively and courageously doing their magical work in the world. Each episode is a bewitching journey with relevant discussions on topics such as Wiccan pagan spirituality, writing, culture, magical practices, art, ritual, and the craft in its many forms. Yuletide blessings and happy holidays from the Oracle of Luna podcast. I'm Bridget Engels, the host, creator, and producer of the show, and I'd like to take a moment to thank you for your listener support over the last year. I hope you've enjoyed my interviews with these incredible goddess guests who amplify the voice of the divine feminine in the world today. Also, if you've been listening to my show for a while, please feel free to text with what you like about the show and what you'd like to hear more of. The link to the text is at the top of every show note. It's free and secure. We have a very exciting Season 5 planned starting in January of 2026. So stay tuned and blessed be. Merry meet! Welcome to another episode of the Oracle of Luna podcast. I'm Bridget Engels, your host, and today I'm delighted to chat with Sara Haydon. Sara is the author of Winter Magic, A Witch's Yule, published by Atlantic Books, which explores the intersection of nature, seasonal living, and personal spirituality. Sara writes and supports others on their journeys of transformation. Her background is in psychology, mental health, and offender rehabilitation. She lives in the woods of Finland in a cabin with her family, and she shares moments of everyday magic on her beloved Instagram platform at Hawthorne Hollows. Welcome, Sara.
Thank you so much, Bridget. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so happy you're here. So how's your day or evening going there in Finland?
Yeah, going really well. We've just moved from England, so I'm still kind of getting used to the really dark evenings, but it's super cozy, and yeah, we're having a great time. Had a good day today. How about yourself?
Well, it's early morning here in Las Vegas in the US,
Yeah.
and so having my coffee and starting my day with you.
There you go. No better way to start the day then.
All right, so we've got a lot to unpack here, but I usually start out my show asking my guests, how did your spiritual journey with witchcraft or magic begin, and what did that look like for you?
Yeah, I think it's a good question to start off with. I think there's, spiritual journeys look so different for everybody. And I think there's this idea that it has to look a certain way sometimes, like everyone's supposed to go through this big, intense, dark night of the soul season. And of course, many people do. I think those stereotypes exist for a reason. But I suppose my sort of spiritual journey, awakening, transformation journey was in kind of a lightning bolt awakening, if you will. It was more sort of subtle than that. I think growing up in Finland, surrounded by forests and this sort of very understated, simple Nordic way of living and being, I think that seeped into me without kind of me even realizing. And I think that kind of built-in respect for nature, the seasons, the darkness, and the kind of calm, peaceful living.
Yeah.
That was probably my earliest experiences of sort of magic without being able to kind of, verbalize it yet. That was just my reality. That was just kind of my experience. And so, yeah, I think even as an adult, I never really fully lost that sense of wonder or that sort of instinctive urge to look for magic in the world. Of course, growing up, there's definitely seasons where you drift away from it. You go to university, you get jobs, responsibilities. But I think my spiritual awakening personally was actually more of a returning to that inner child, that inner child who lived in the forest in Finland and really was interconnected with nature and magic. And and
Mm.
curiosity. So kind of learning to reconnect with that, learning to respect that intuitive childlike self. That was a big part of my spiritual awakening journey.
Mm.
Um, yeah,
So kind of
definitely.
going full circle then.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I think that's been the foundation for my whole practice, honestly. I think for me, spirituality looked like it's very personal. It is for everyone. I know it is, but I suppose I never followed a specific path like a Wicca or a particular pagan tradition as such. It was always my own path led by what felt right. And yeah, a huge part of that was just reconnecting with that inner child and reconnecting with my intuition, learning how to trust that again. And I suppose that reconnection really began in my 20s. So I was a bit of a late bloomer in that sense. I had come through a few difficult jobs. I've worked in forensic psychology, as you know, so it was kind of very dark, heavy work.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that period really pushed me inward. So it definitely shifted something in me that I'm now very grateful for, of course. But it did make me ask and stop and ask myself, sort of, what do I want life to feel like again? Kind of come face to face with my own shadows as such. And that really slowly I started following that thread of sort of joy and yeah, my own spiritual path again. Definitely.
Hmm. Yeah, you mentioned that you grew up in Finland. Did you grow up in a rural area?
Yeah, so
Curious.
not so Helsinki, which is the capital
Yeah.
city, so not exactly rural, but it's I don't know how it is out there, but we're not far from the city, but we still have pockets of sort of nature everywhere. I mean, I think it's something wild like 80% of Finland or 75% of Finland is covered in forest. So you're never too far away from
Yeah.
sort of just being smack bang in the middle of a forest, being able to forage berries and just live in a very kind of intuitive way and a very instinctual way. So that's something that I didn't necessarily have in England. I lived out there for 12 years with my family, um, my husband, who I met there, and now I've brought back to Finland with me. So, yeah, it's definitely been a full circle being able to kind of reconnect with everything now that we're back here.
Yeah. So, did you have any mentors or, I don't know, teachers, family members who kind of have influenced your spiritual magical path?
Yeah, I feel like my influences came from lots of different places. Growing up, my family wasn't spiritual in any formal or labeled way. There wasn't any sort of witchcraft or anything like that in the house, but there was a lot of this intuitive magic woven through everyday life. And I think what's funny is at the time, none of us realized what that was. But, when you're little, things like comfort and imagination and protection and belief and all those sorts of things just happen naturally.
Yeah.
The way my mom parented especially was very intuitive and very connected to her inner child, so she didn't call it anything, but looking back now, so much of what she did was essentially energy work or manifestation or protective rituals, just done in that very instinctive nurturing way
So
for
that's
good.
beautiful. That kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, I could see where that would tie in with your parenting style.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that was my role model. And I think like unknowingly she's massively influenced my spiritual journey. She's amazing and incredible with children. And I think her ability to connect at that deeper emotional imaginative level definitely shaped me and my parenting, like you said, as well as yeah, even if it wasn't done so intentionally, it was just natural to her. She's a great mom.
Hmm. You've written a beautiful book, and it has a very, to me, it has an instinctual and also kind of naive, not naive, but childlike kind of
Hmm.
writing style. And
Yeah.
it's so beautiful. It's Winter Magic, A Witch's Yule. And let's talk a little bit about this book that you wrote and what inspired you to write it, and how does the reader work with your book?
Yeah. So I wrote Winter Magic.
Hmm.
And really, it's all about reconnecting with your magic and the magic of the season during and around the celebration of Yule. And at the heart of it is really learning to kind of create and foster a celebration that honors the winter solstice in this time of year. And when I wrote it, I really wanted to create something that felt sort of both grounding but also enchanting, something that spoke to people who already love Yule and witchcraft and may have their own practice and be very knowledgeable, but also to people who might be completely new to it or who
Mm.
simply want to kind of bring intention into the darker months. I know this kind of spiritual world can be a bit of a minefield to navigate, especially when you're starting out. It was quite daunting to me. I knew I was drawn to crystals. I knew I was drawn to tarot and the moon cycles, but you just don't know really where to start.
Yeah.
So this book kind of gives people the chance to sample different things whilst going through the journey of Yule as well. So the inspiration definitely came from different places. Part of it was obviously my own upbringing. There's a particular atmosphere around winter and Christmas and Yule in the Nordic countries where this kind of magical, mystical mixes with nostalgia and coziness and folklore and this very deep relationship with nature.
Mm-hmm.
But the interesting thing is I didn't really understand the uniqueness of that until I moved from Finland to England. So living in England gave me this almost like third perspective on my own childhood and upbringing. It was like, oh, not everyone experiences winter like this, or not everyone celebrates it this way. When you're in your own little bubble, you think, that's the only thing you see and experience, isn't it? So it made me reconnect with it in a much more conscious way, that I realized that I actually had something to share and people were interested because they had a different experience of the celebration. And yeah, so that was one of the big reasons that I decided to then share my love for Yule. Even though there's so many books out there of Yule, it was
Not really.
Oh, really?
I've been looking. There are several books, but not really recent. And so when I came upon your book, and especially from the Nordic kind of perspective, I was really intrigued. My side of the family, there's a lot of ancestors from Denmark, and so I grew up in the U.S., so I didn't really have a lot of Danish traditions, but there were some woven in, and so it was kind of like, oh, I wonder what this Nordic kind of Yule perspective is all about. And so I was really intrigued by your book, and so hence having you on the show. But it's very very beautiful, and like you said, mystical, and very connected with the darkness and nature and the spirits. So I know some of the chapters in your book, we can talk a little bit more about it, connect with like certain deities and the evergreen tree and tree magic and sigil magic. And do you want to talk a little bit about some of the deities that you can connect with during the Yuletide season, and maybe from a Nordic perspective, if you want?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, I think it's so woven into the culture as well that it's sometimes difficult to see outside your own culture until you leave or go and see and hear something else. So I think it's really interesting when people are interested in the Nordic culture, and especially around these seasonal celebrations that are so kind of normalized. I mean, the whole month of December is called Joulukuu, which translates to Yule month. So for us, if I'm in England, I'm talking about, the festive season coming up, people just refer to Christmas. But in Finland and a lot of the other Nordic countries as well, it's quite literally Yule month. It's always been something that we've celebrated. But it's great that you have also looked into your sort of ancestry and you know where your roots are and how you feel connected to those cultures. And I think that's amazing.
But I know there's a lot of darkness in Copenhagen and Denmark, and I'm obviously in Finland, and it's like, candles, you get cozy, you settle in with the darkness, and it's a big deal. And I love that. I love how the Nordic people embrace the darkness and make it cozy.
Yeah, we do. You have to. I think on par, it's a survival mechanism as much as it is magic. But it's when we're talking about Yule and Winter Solstice, it's obviously a celebration of the returning of light. It's this paradox of it being the darkest night, but also the returning of the light. So things like candle magic and things like that obviously become really integral as part of the celebration. And I think there's this misconception that around spirituality in general, that these things, you have to have lots of tools and you might have to spend lots of money to be able to do something, or buy a bunch of crystals or have a bunch of books or information before you can sort of start. And I think Yule is one of those celebrations, to me at least, where you're really getting to kind of rediscover the festive spirit in a different light. I mean, I know what modern Christmas has made all of us kind of a little bit crazy at some point with the
Yeah.
money spending, and I think there's so much pressure to kind of create that winter perfectionistic Christmas for your
Yes,
children
from a
and everything. It's
consumerist
become absolutely,
standpoint.
yeah, absolutely. I think it's really taken away from that intentionality that the celebration was supposed to be about. A lot of pressure, especially for parents, the
Yeah.
endless to-do list as per such. So I think, and that was another reason why I wanted to write this book, is I wanted to speak to those mothers and speak to those fathers and speak to all the people who are kind of overwhelmed at this time of season, and just kind of go, hey, there is an alternate way. We can change things that aren't working. We can reconnect with something that's much older and much more meaningful.
Yes.
And if you have children, bring our children along with us. Traditions are built from reconnecting with the old ways, and at any point you get to decide what you want your family's traditions to look like.
Yeah. So some of the deities in your book, there were some gods and goddesses, Odin and
Mhm.
Freya and gnomes, there's elves, can you talk a little
Yeah.
bit about some of the Nordic deities that may have
Yeah.
some traditions surrounding Yule?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, um, there's definitely, it's a season incredibly rich in folklore and mythology,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
full of stories about spirits and guardians and Yule monsters and ancestral figures, and the whole interplay between light and darkness. I think that's when it all comes out. Um, and yeah, I do go, I go into them quite a lot in my book, along with sort of gentle ways to connect with those deities and little rituals to energetically protect yourself and your family during this time of year. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of Nordic mythology, as you can probably imagine. And I think a lot of people, especially in the sort of spiritual community, work with these archetypes in a way where connecting with the guardians and the deities during Yule is more about asking, what am I honoring, and what do I want to honor the seasons. And then these archetypes and these um Odin and Freya and Frigg and all these types of things, they're symbolic, and
Yes.
they represent parts that come out during winter, both in nature and in ourselves. Rest, intuition, honoring the returning light, protection, nature, fertility, things like that. So I
Yeah.
think there are different ways to work with these deities. It doesn't have to always be devotional. It doesn't have to be ritualistic. It can be symbolic. It can be whatever kind of feels comfortable for you. And I think that's what I try to guide the reader through, as well as how to work with spirits and deities in a way that goes along with your spiritual beliefs and feels aligned for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. The thing, the beings that I personally feel the most connected to, even though they're not sort of deities as such in the traditional sense, are the Tonttus, which in Finland they're like these. I think you mentioned already. They're like these little gnomes, like household spirits as such, and
Yeah.
they're a huge part of the Yule folklore. They're usually described as having sort of white beards and red knitted caps. Think like mini Santa Clauses, and
Yes,
then
and we see them in commercials, and they're woven into our
absolutely,
lives, and they're
yes,
trinkets in our front lawns, and it's
absolutely.
interesting how they've made their way into our society.
Exactly. And I think that's great, but it's also really fun to learn the kind of history behind those things
Right.
that you do see in sort of Christmas commercials. So
Yeah.
again, these tontos are believed to kind of live quietly in the corners of homes and barns and forests, and looking after animals and the land and the well-being of the household. And traditionally, families leave offerings for them during Yule. So like a bowl of warm porridge or a little bit of food as sort of a gesture of gratitude. And the belief is that if you treat your tonto kindly, then they'll bring protection and good fortune and harmony to your home for the year ahead. And I've always loved that tradition because it's so whimsical and rooted in sort of appreciation and gratitude and this reciprocal cycle of
Yes.
taking
And
in,
pagan
which is
roots. Mm.
absolutely, again, and all of this is the kind of quiet, gentle magic that doesn't scream witchcraft, but it's
Yeah.
all that old ways of pagan living. And
Yeah.
yeah, we have
Folkloric.
the tradition. Absolutely. There's a sauna Tonttu, which everyone basically has saunas in their houses in Finland. It's so cold. It's not, if you don't have a sauna in your home, then you have it kind of very nearby at the very least. So we believe there are sauna Tontut as well. So the sauna spirits, if you will, and the saunas are considered really sacred spaces, especially during Yule. So
Yeah.
historically, people believed it was important to behave well in a sauna. So no shouting, no arguing, no swearing, things like that, because the sauna Tonttu would scold you or if you disrupted the peace. So there's so many different stories that children connect to as well. And yeah, it's fun. There's a lot of fun folklore stories in Finland.
Yeah. A lot of whimsy.
Yes, definitely.
But then, underneath that, there's the darker spirits of, trickster spirits too, right? I mean, some of these gnomes or elves can turn on you and do kind of mean things, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think they're mischievous in the same way. I think a lot of the spirits that would then supposedly have turned on you would be to kind of make sure that you're behaving, making sure that respecting, you're kind of keeping things in balance. So if things fell out of equilibrium, like you are fighting in the sauna or the chakras are not aligned, that's when they kind of like try to bring balance into your life by going, okay, well, this isn't good, you're being naughty. So those kind of naughty or nice elements also come into play, but they have real folkloric roots.
And they steal your shoes.
Exactly. Yeah. They hide your things. They steal your shoes. They might break a few things here or there. Nothing serious, nothing too scary.
Yeah.
Perhaps it was to kind of keep the children in line as well.
So can you briefly describe how you and your family celebrate Yule in Finland and some of your favorite winter solstice traditions?
Yeah, definitely. So our Yule celebrations are, I would say, quite simple, very Finnish, very family centered. We celebrate on the 24th, which is traditional in Finland. And for us, the day always begins with food. So breakfast, especially rice porridge in the morning, is what's traditionally made. So my mom hides an almond in the big pot of porridge that's use it for hours and hours and hours, and it's great. And whoever gets the almond is said to have good luck for the coming year.
Yeah.
So it's tiny little things like that make, they're the traditions that just make it feel really special. And after that, we go and have the Yule sauna, which I've already mentioned a little bit about. But it's, I would say, probably one of the most meaningful rituals of the celebration. The
You
sauna
jump
is
in like a cold pond after that?
You can do. People kind of, I don't know if they do it Yule morning, because Yule morning is kind of calm and peaceful, but definitely throughout the winter, people go sauna and then they strip naked and go run outside and go roll in the snow, or they go dip into the sea. They cut holes into the ice and then they dip in there and have a little freezing swim.
A cold plunge.
That's it, cold plunge, but like authentic.
Yeah.
Authentic cold plunge. But yeah, not necessarily Yule morning. We keep it really calm, really peaceful. But yeah, the sauna is properly cleaned beforehand. It's all candle lit. Sometimes we use a bit of incense, essential oils, things like that.
Yeah.
And it becomes this kind of representative cleansing transition moment of almost like washing off the old year before stepping into the new one. And it's it's that incredible
beautiful.
grounding. Yeah, that's what we do first thing in the morning on Yule, on the 24th. And we also like to get into nature. So now that we've moved back to Finland and live right next to the forest, we're able to leave out food for the birds and wildlife on the solstice. And we also want to really include our daughter and teach her these traditions of giving back to nature and things like that. What we also like to do, my daughter, is go out into the forest and actually decorate a living tree with anything that we can find in the forest. So like pine cones, leaves, and things like that.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Quite special. Yeah. I mean, bringing in a tree is traditionally, protection for the house and things like that. And I still absolutely love that tradition. We have plenty of trees here, and we really protect our forests. So it's not unethical in any way, but there's something about just kind of going out into the forest and not chopping down a tree, but really honoring where the tree is, the land that it's grown on, and
And
bringing
the
some
nature spirits.
exactly that. Of course, we like bringing in evergreens and pine and juniper and even bits of moss and things like that into the house so that we kind of feel connected to nature even when we're indoors. But yeah, just spending as much time outside. It's the nature rituals that are really important for us. Another thing that we've kind of that's become quite meaningful for us as a family is this idea of wishing for others during this time of year. So I talk a little bit about it in my book as well, this concept of weaving intention into whatever you're doing. So even when we're baking or giving a small gift or just even lighting a candle, we make a wish for someone else for that coming year. And it really, I feel like it shifts the focus from sort of what am I getting for Christmas this year? What's in it for me? So how can I think about my family, my community, and the people that I love? So I talk a little bit about that in my book. And actually there's a recipe for wish bread in there as well. So you literally weave or fold intentions and wishes into the dough as you bake it. And it becomes this beautiful ritualistic tradition that you can then carry on with your children and pass on.
I love that. The spirit of generosity.
Absolutely. I mean, food is a huge part of Yule as well.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about the I can't even pronounce it. It's like puff pastry with jam in the center. I've been making the last couple of years. It's Finnish and it's a torturo. Oh, I forget the name of it. What?
Yeah, joulutorttu. Yeah, that was good. Joulutorttu. It's a tricky one. Yeah, it's a Christmas tart, I suppose, is what it translates to. You can also call them Christmas stars, joulutähdet. But yeah, it has like a little plum jam in the middle. They're super simple to make and they're very pretty and very tasty. And we start eating them as early as sort of late November.
Oh, I love that.
And you'll find them absolutely everywhere. But yeah, we have lots of traditional recipes that we make every year, some of which are in my book as well. My grandma's Yule mustard is in there as a recipe, and she's made that our whole lives. And I talk a little bit about the pagan history behind Yule ham and the lots of different traditions around feasting. We drink a lot of glöggi, which is like a Nordic mulled wine type of drink, and
I've had that.
starts very early in the season. Yes, it's delicious. It's very good. And yeah, it's one of those things that instantly gets you into the festive spirit, kind of connecting over food and
Absolutely.
feasting. I think that's
the magic of food and the alchemy that it brings.
Absolutely. And I think that's also one of the things is what I tried to do with the book is to really make the magic accessible to everyone. So I talk quite a lot about kitchen magic in my book as well, and how you can kind of seamlessly fit some of these Yule rituals and practices into everyday life. You know, whether you're stirring a pot of soup or making bread or making drinks, you can weave wishes and intention into what you're creating, and then that food and drink becomes the kind of carrier for the magic that you're making. So I tried to make, and I suppose me as someone who hasn't had like a specific traditional practice as such, I really thought about, how does magic show up in my everyday life? How do I use it? Because it was so hidden in my childhood. It's almost something that I've had to extract out as an adult, really sit down and think about like, okay, how does magic show up in my everyday life? And I found that that's actually been really helpful in making it accessible to everybody as well, to kind of pass on little things that I do on the everyday.
Which brings me to my next question. Yeah. How can we celebrate and amplify and cultivate everyday Yuletide magic as city pagans in small spaces or urban life or different terrains where there's no snow and no trees, maybe in the desert, or if you're living on a boat? How can we incorporate some of these beautiful Yuletide magic kind of traditions?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really great question, and one that I think that a lot of people, either have a sort of, that's the first thing that pops into their head. But I don't have this, but I don't have this, or I don't live somewhere where it's cold enough, or I don't have snow, so I can't do this. And so I think it's a really good conversation to have around books that might feel like they're centering around a certain landscape.
Right.
And I think the biggest thing to remember is that Yuletide magic doesn't need to be another sort of thing that is tied to a specific country or or even culture,
or
and
take a lot of time.
exactly. And it shouldn't feel like a task on your to-do list. If it does, then you're going about it wrong. It's not about creating the perfect winter aesthetic or carving out hours of time that you don't have. It's about folding those little moments of intention into life that you're already living in. So for me, for example, the easiest way to do that is lighting a candle with a quick intention before you start the day, or drinking something warm and using that first sip to ground yourself, or doing a little meditation, or you know and these aren't specifically tied to Yule either, noticing the sky in the morning on your way to work and setting intentions for the day. They're those tiny pauses that create a surprising amount of magic when you do them regularly. It's that practice that you get into. I think specifically for Yule, I would say that creating that scent, that atmosphere is really something that you can play around with. Things like bringing in certain scents and bringing in different flavors. So even if even if you live in a busy city or somewhere without snow, things like bringing in smells and scents of pine or cinnamon or citrus oil, it immediately shifts the energy in the room, doesn't it? So
yeah,
you can play around with different sensory things, lighting, soft lighting, a few evergreens, setting out a bowl of nuts or spices on your altar, drying out oranges. It doesn't have to be elaborate, and it certainly shouldn't feel like a chore. It's just creating those small pockets of seasonal reminders.
yeah,
And
I
then of
love
course
that
it's about
because we have so much pressure to make our
Mhm.
homes like beautiful for Christmas and la 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 and drag out all the ornaments and you know do
Yeah,
such a big deal, and it's so it can be very stressful. And
it
so
can
I
be.
love
Yeah,
that this
absolutely.
Nordic sense of coziness and
Yeah,
honoring the nature spirits and just these gentle reminders of the wheel of the year and the darkness and the light, how beautiful these traditions are and how simple and easy they can be for those of us who don't live in the snow or the forest.
absolutely. And I think also let's not forget that it's about connection as well. I think that is something that
Yes.
modern day Christmas has, still does emphasize as well. It's about spending time with family. It's about
Mhm.
connection. And that's what's really at the
Yeah,
heart of you. If
friends
you're
and
thinking about
family, but also
exactly,
it's a time of reflection, right? It's
absolutely.
the end of one year and it's sort of the beginning of another on the calendar. And so there's a lot of kind of a nice celebration of just understanding that, okay, one part of the cycle is over and then we begin a new one pretty soon. So that threshold to me has always been very magical.
Yes, absolutely. There's that threshold magic, isn't it? It's a ritual in of
Yeah.
itself, kind of consciously living through that darkest night of the year, and then moving towards lighter days.
Yes,
And I think there's
absolutely.
something that paradox to me is really beautiful, and it brings a lot of people hope. So even
Yes.
even if you feel like things are moving really slowly, or things feel really heavy or really stagnant, there's something buffering underneath it all. There's something shifting, because there's that change happening, below and underneath it all. So I think that's what brings people a lot of hope.
Yes, that
I think
spark of life.
exactly. And that's what Nordics are very, very good at doing, is kind of looking forward to spring, looking forward to the light. It kind of,
Yeah.
takes us through the dark winters, but
Yeah.
also just kind of reframing the darkness as not something that's like all encompassing and just going to swallow you up. It's almost like, the way I like to think about it is like a blanket. It just holds you. And like you said, it's about reflection and going inside of yourself and that introspection. So what better place to do that is when you're kind of weighted down and held and comforted and quiet and it's dark. And I think that's nature's gift to us, and we can use it and take full advantage of it, or we can kind of get real sad about it and think, oh gosh, I wish it was summer. But I like to
Yeah.
try and embrace it. It does, sometimes it is more of a conscious effort to do that.
Yeah.
But I
Sure.
think once you have that mental shift and mindset shift, it's much easier for
Oh,
sure.
yeah. I love it. I love the cozy season. I don't know if it's because of my ancestry, but I just love the kind of the cold and the dark. And living in Seattle for almost 20 years, we kind of,
Wow.
embrace the gloom, as they say.
Yeah, the rain, lots of rain, huh?
Yeah, but it's a cocooning kind of thing, but also, we get out and we walk in the rain and
Yeah.
get out and do your normal stuff. So anyway, it's that sense of embracing the darkness and honoring it as we move into the season of the light. I love that so much. So thank you so much again for being on the show, Sarah. I love chatting with you.
Sure.
And before we go, do you want to tell us your website or social media for our listeners so they can find out about you and your book and your magical offerings?
Yeah, definitely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. It's been really fun chatting with you.
Yeah.
And the best place to find me on is Instagram. I'm on there, as you said, at Hawthorne Hollows, which is really the heart of everything I share. It kind of started as a storytelling project when we
Okay.
moved into this house by the forest here in Finland. And it's just grown into kind of a cozy little corner on the internet where I post slow living moments and seasonal rituals and bits of folklore and things like that. So yeah, that's definitely the best place to
Okay.
find me. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your Yule traditions and inspiring us with Nordic Yule magic and moments of peace and joy. And blessed be and happy Yuletide to all our listeners.
Thank you. It's been a real joy.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to sign off now. Until next time. Bye bye.